Hey guys, John Conley from UncleJohnSoap.com. Sorry about the weird, strange lighting here. I have a light under this counter here, and I'm kind of working while I talk. Got an email from one of my YouTube followers this morning, and they're having a hard time. And I thought they were making regular soap, regular lye soap, olive oil, coconut oil, sodium hydroxide, and I was mistaken. Evidently, this guy is a wet shaver and trying to jump right into the deep end and make shave soap. You can do that. That's not a problem. But it's kind of like running before you walk. Without knowing some of the basics of how soap's going to act with water and lye and all that stuff, it's going to be kind of challenging. Then again, sometimes when you jump off the cliff and, you know, it's like the coyote running off the cliff. If he doesn't look down and he doesn't realize he's off the ground, he doesn't fall. I know it's a cartoon reference, I get it, but anyway, hopefully you do too. So, I tried to break it down for him. I don't know where he got his numbers. He said that he pulled the recipe together from a couple different videos and different soap makers and things. I wouldn't do that. I would, if I was starting out fresh and I was going directly into making shave soap, I would find one tried and true recipe, or at least what the person who posted the recipe, what they think is tried and true, and go with that. And then make it, let it cure, see if it turned out the way theirs did first. Then use it and see if it turns out the way you like it. If it's not the way you like it, now you got to do some studying and some research and figure out, okay, what do I need to do differently to make this the way I want it, to give the dense lather, the slickness, you know, for the razor glide, the post-shave feel, all that. Honestly, everybody thinks this has to be really complicated, and it doesn't. I see people using a ton of cocoa butter, shea butter, things like that, and those things, those two things specifically, can add great qualities to a bath soap and shave soap. But if you use too much of it, two things happen. One, it gets a little waxy feeling. It gets a little strange. Two, you get kind of a funky scent out of it, and sometimes that'll override whatever fragrance or essential oil you're using for scent. So keep that in mind, especially if you are hot processing your soap and you add a lot of cocoa butter to the end of the batch after the cook for super fatting. I can smell it. And after being in here all day with all these scents, I don't smell much. But I tried a soap the other day that was heavy on that in just the super fat, and I didn't care for it. It just, it smells like you poured fragrance into peanut butter to me. And that's a little weird. But anyway, so if you go to soapcalc.com to work out your recipe, don't freak out. First thing is, know what country you're in, know what measurements you're using. If you're using a recipe from an American who posted a video or a recipe in a blog, and they keep referring to ounces, that's okay. Put in exactly what they said into SoapCalc in ounces. Don't worry if you know what it is or not. I don't know what grams are. I don't use grams. But if I follow a European recipe and type it in exactly the way they said, you know, so many grams of this oil and that oil, SoapCalc, now let's see, let me get this right. It shows you all of that right here. Can you see it? Pounds, ounces, grams. It converts it for you right there. So don't get worried about it. And don't, you know, the worst case scenario, you can go to Google and just type in, you know, 40 ounces converted to grams, and it'll come right up in the Google search, or the other way around. So don't freak out about measurements. Google is your friend. I mean, it's quick and easy. But like I said, worst case scenario, if you type it in, if you're using a pre-canned recipe just to get started, SoapCalc will convert it for you. And when you print the recipe, it shows all three. When you type up a recipe, especially, let's talk about shave soap for a second. When you type up a recipe I think people get confused with the dual lies. Standard protocol, that sounds too fancy, but anyway, the standard way to do soap, shave soap anymore is dual lyes, NaOH, sodium hydroxide, and KOH, potassium hydroxide. So basically, you're going to do 40% of sodium hydroxide and 60% potassium hydroxide. I type up one recipe, and for the type of lye, I always enter sodium first, put my oils in, calculate the recipe, and print it. Once that's done, I go back to where you fill in your information on the recipe, and the only thing I change is the lye type. Now I type in or click the dot for KOH, potassium hydroxide. Recalculate the recipe and print it. Now you have two recipes. Everything on each page is identical except for the type of lye. Got me so far? All right. Once you have those, I take one recipe page, and I know it's a waste of paper. You can do it right from the computer. But what I usually do is once I'm done, I'll staple both of them together just so I remember that it's a shave soap. And I'll write it in big bold letters, shave soap, maybe down here somewhere, just for my benefit. But on that one sheet, I write down that it's dual lye, okay? NaOH, there's my total from one sheet. KOH, there's my total from the second sheet. And then I convert it, 60% of this one, 40% of this one. So now there are my two total lyes. This isn't complicated, guys. Sometimes I think, and I'm not trying to be condescending, I'm just saying and I do it too with other things that I'm just starting out in. I've done it with, you name it, everything. So don't think I'm picking on anybody, because I do it too. So we as humans tend to overcomplicate everything. I see it every day with shave stuff, carpentry, you name it. People tend to they overthink it. And I do it too. So now you've got those two things converted. You have your entire recipe. Just ignore the lye amount up here. You're going to use the water amount that it tells you. Now here's your two lyes. I usually mix in my potassium hydroxide first, stir it in, weigh in my sodium hydroxide, stir it in, set it off to the side, and let it go until it's clear. That's it. So, another thing, I see a lot of people that are starting out in shave soap making that want to add olive oil, sunflower oil, things like that. You can add those things, but honestly, they're not going to do you much good. Most liquid oils, except for like castor oil, things like that, they're going to add conditioning, but they're going to kill your lather. So, you want things like coconut oil for sure. Stearic acid is almost a must anymore if you're going to compete, if you're planning on doing this as a business or even for yourself. Stearic acid, 90% of the time or more, what you're going to get now is palm oil derived. And so many of the governments and farmers now, the plantations for palm oil, are converting over and learning how to do proper crop maintenance so that they're not having to clear cut forests anymore. So that's not as much of a concern as it used to be. And palm oil, to me, is a great animal fat substitute, like tallow or lard. But olive oil, sunflower oil, things like that, grapeseed oil, leave them out. Leave that for your bath soap. Coconut oil, palm oil, stearic acid, cocoa butter and shea butter. I wouldn't do real high percentages of those, but they work great. You just got to play with your percentages. Again, you don't want that scent to come through, and it may not act as good as you think it does. I would also recommend, honestly, for first timers, make a couple batches of bath soap. You use bath soap anyway, probably, so it's not going to hurt you. It's going to be a little easier to get your head around it, the concept at first. and then start playing around with the shave soap. You can do whatever you want, of course, but that just seems to be a natural progression to me. All right, guys. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email at unclejohnsoap@gmail.com. You can go to our website, unclejohnsoap.com, and there's a contact form there. You can contact me that way. You can leave a comment down below on YouTube. You can private message me on Facebook at Uncle John Soap. So, yeah. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.